Now, continuing with Iran, the country's new president, Ebrahim Raisi, aka the Hangman of Tehran, has been sworn in by the Supreme Committee. And he'll be fully initiated by the Iranian parliament tomorrow, thus officially starting a new administration in the Islamic Republic. But with the country suffering from rampant coronavirus infections, a horrible and worsening economic crisis, and pressures over its nuclear weapons program, Iran has yet to fully flesh out its new diplomatic policies. So what does all this mean for Iran and the world? Joining us to discuss is ILTV's resident regional expert, Asaf Nissan. Asaf, thanks so much for being with us again.
Thank you so much.
All right, so first of all, I want to start with the shipjackings, or these hijackings. Iran has been blamed for these recent attacks, but unlike last week's drone attack against the Israeli-owned ship on Thursday, this has not really been proven definitively that it was the IRGC. How do we know if the allegations against them are true?
Well, we can't be sure per se if the attacks are Iranian officials or not, official attacks or not. We do know that the IRGC, the Iranian regime itself, has denied those attacks, and reports came out that there was no official involvement. But speaking of the attack on Oman, we actually have Defense Minister Benny Gantz, who issued a statement not long ago saying that the IRGC Air Force is responsible for those attacks. So thus we can't be sure, especially on those in Oman. So we can't be sure per se to say that Iran is in charge of it, but we do know that Iran has its hand all over it. So of course we can't be sure if we can't say per se if it's not or not.
Well, so let's talk a little bit more about the IRGC. Ebrahim Raisi is now president. What changes are we, or operational or behavioral changes, are we likely to see or can we expect from the IRGC and the Iranian proxies under the new Raisi administration?
Well, the government itself hasn't been officially active yet, so we can't say per se what policies we will see, but we do see the proxies already in action. I mean, just this morning, 3 rockets were shot towards Israel from Lebanon when one of them failed, and 2, of course, passing over the border, 1 intercepted, and 1 hitting Kiryat Shmona. But that itself is just showing that the proxies themselves are already on rampant attacks, and the INSS actually released a report recently to President Herzog saying that the proxies themselves will be on the ground much more and will be much more proactive. And of course, the nuclear program will still run and will still continue. We won't see any changes from Iran at that point.
So, I mean, you just mentioned how the INSS is saying that, either way, and I know that there's a report similarly from, I think, May, from the Gatestone Institute,
exactly,
which is also saying that with or without a deal, Iran is going to pursue this nuclear program. It is, and they claim that it is a military weapons program. So according to the reports that come out, why doesn't Iran seem too interested in returning to the JCPOA, especially because people say that it might solve their economic problems, at least?
Well, on the first part, we won't see Iran coming back to the table because, again, since they are on the verge of a nuclear bomb, they don't feel that much obligated anymore to the JCPOA. And of course, with the new president in charge and Iran recently signing an agreement with China for 25-year collaboration, their financial trouble don't seem that prudent for them to go back to the table and agree to every term the IAEA and any other Western civilization would want to give them.
Are Raisi's policies, or rather how different are Raisi's policies towards the West, towards the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, et cetera, different from his predecessor, Rouhani?
Well, Rouhani himself is more of a reformist, and Raisi, since being more of a conservative, will be much more on the offensive side of the deal. He would not allow any restrictions to come forth. He would probably fight anything that Rouhani already signed, which means even if Iran goes back to the table for another deal of the JCPOA, we're going to see a different Iran. We're going to see a different fight, a different decision, and they're probably going to try to bring it back to the beginning of the terms in order to set their own terms and own decisions on what's going to happen.
My final question, how are locals in Iran reacting to the new administration?
Well, the new administration, according to the locals, wouldn't be that much interesting as regards to Israel and the nuclear bomb. We will see much more focus regarding COVID, regarding the economic crisis. Thus, those are the things that would be more prudent for the simple Iranian citizen. And if he will see that the government itself doesn't care about him, and yet again continues his ongoing international fight with Israel and the West in order to complete its doctrine, they're not going to want to wait for them anymore. They don't even have the strife against Israel. They just want to live like human beings. And if they don't get that response, and then they don't get their proper respect, at the end of the day, they'll ask for his head and ask him to resign.
All right, well, we'll see how all of these things actually play out, of course, if any sort of calls are made. Thank you so much for being with us, Asaf.
Thank you so much.